All right, so one of the things I enjoy doing, especially in classes, is working technology. Who in here likes to work on technology? Who does not like technology? Why? Is it just because it's technology? Okay. I enjoy technology. As you can see, I've got this thing going, this little robot thing that'll follow me around as I move, which is kind of cool. That's why I just sit here and I don't move, but I can if I want to.
So I'm assuming that the black on the front is the sensor that correlates with the device on your neck.
Yes. So they call this a marker, even though it's a remote. I don't know why they call it a marker. That's what they call it.
You can draw with it.
So what this, no, you can't. It would be nice if you could. But what this does is this acts as the microphone. So there's the microphone. So it's picking up the mic here and putting it into the audio. So you're not relying on the camera, the phone's audio. And then I can turn on and turn off the recording here. So this is kind of cool, but it has a little sensor that follows, allows you to move it back and forth. And I have two more of these. I can have up to 4 of these markers that act as secondary markers that I could place around the room, and all they do is pick up audio. So that if this was in a regular classroom and they were either hanging or sitting on a desk or something, a student asks a question, the audio picks up for whichever marker is closest to them to get the audio so that you don't lose that audio. You know how you watch these interviews and somebody asks a question, but they're not mic'd, so you can't hear it. So if whoever's answering the question or the moderator doesn't repeat the question, you don't ever know what they asked, and all you get is the answer. That helps eliminate it for that.
So,
You can also hook up multiple cameras with this.
So you also have 2 lights in there. I remember when you were hooking it up, you didn't have but 1 light. So what does each light signify?
The green light is the connection to the remote, to the robot. The red light is telling us that it's recording. Okay. That's all it is. I've had this thing for 5 years maybe, and I've used it a few times in a class, mostly for demonstration purposes, did a webinar on it and all this stuff, but I've not used it intensely until now. And I thought, oh, if we're going to do this and I want to record the classes, this is like the ideal way, because if I'm walking around in a classroom, it follows wherever I'm going.
Right.
And so it records at 1080p, so it's high quality resolution, and so it's still as good.
Now, does it record to SD or is it straight to like a hardware device?
It records into the app, and then I can save it to the phone and then put it wherever I want.
Okay.
I can also upload it to Swivel's website if I have the account for it.
And I assume that it's in like gigabyte, the file size is like a
Well, it's 1080p, so yeah,
yeah, it's relatively large.
depending on how long the video is.
Okay.
But my phone has enough memory for it to record up to 3.5 hours or something at 1080, with all the stuff I already have on there. So yeah. So anyway, but this is a cool little device. So you'll see it often in here, I'm sure, and in my other classes you'll see it in there as well. But I love technology, and I love working on technology and using technology. That's why we have a computerized light board and a computer or digital soundboard. We used to have an old analog soundboard, which analog sound is still great, don't get me wrong. Digital sound now gives you all kinds of things you could do with it that you couldn't do before. You can fine tune some of the sound if you know what you're doing. But it also makes it more difficult because there's that much more to have to learn about it. So, but once you learn one digital board, the others aren't so hard to figure out. Some of them, it just depends on how they've set up the software and all that stuff. But for the most part, once you've learned one, you can figure out others fairly easy. Once you know basic sound, a digital soundboard's not difficult. It's just a matter of what makes this happen. If I need to adjust the high frequencies, what do I need to do that? Whereas back in the old days, there's certain things that said high frequency. So you knew which ones to do, right? high, mid, low. Your gain, high, mid, and low. Those are the things that you need to know mostly. Right and left pan and volume level. Those are the main things you had for control of it. But once you know how to set up all the system and you know where those are, that's easy to do. With digital, you just have to know you push this button to select this microphone, and then all these things are up here. That's basically it. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of cool. And we'll use technology elsewhere throughout. I may use, when we do the online session, I may use a digital Wacom tablet to draw things up as we talk about flats and things like that. Which, by the way, on Thursday when we're doing the digital, I call it digital, it's the online session, the virtual session, I will talk about tools and we'll talk about safety and such. You can already see some of the documents in Blackboard about safety and things, but I'll go into what different tools are available and how these tools are used. Okay, so that's mostly what we're going to do on Thursday, just so you know. And again, it will be recorded for anybody that can't be there. They can watch it later. Any questions about that? Good, that's the way I like it. No, anybody have any questions or any concerns about the class so far? Anybody alive? I didn't hear anything. I was in a virtual class last night, a comm class, public speaking, and I kept asking questions. I got nothing.
I've been dead inside since I discovered Panic at the Disco. So we're clear.
Well, you know, it's disco. I mean, come on. What else do you need to know?
Oh, I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thursday, which
12.
we have a virtual class Thursday?
Yes.
Or coming here Thursday?
No, you can do it from anywhere.
Okay,
I'll have a link on Blackboard for you to log into
okay.
or
So
collaborate.
I'm in person, I could? Is that what you're saying? I'm confused.
You could, but there's no computer in here for you. This room will be locked up.
Oh.
But you could go to a computer lab or wherever, but you need to have earphones so you can hear what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're more than welcome to come up here. It's just I don't know where you're going to go.
Is that every Thursday or just this Thursday?
Every Thursday. Yeah, we just found out too. So. It's okay. I was going to do something. If I didn't do it this way, I was going to do it as video clips anyway.
Okay.
Video of me do. And there may be times that instead of us meeting Thursday, or if I can set it up in time, for instance, I can show you things on the soundboard and light board. I can't really show you all at one time because we can't get everybody in there and socially distant at one time. But I can do it through Collaborate, or I can set up a video camera and record myself doing it and then show you that. And it'll just depend on whether we do that as a live session or as a recorded session, so to speak. Does that make sense? The cool thing about doing a second day virtually as opposed to here's a bunch of stuff online is I don't have to put a bunch of garbage online for you to watch and listen to. We can control what it is by doing it in here. And I can literally be in this room doing it while you guys are online. Like I said, I can be back there with the computer with this thing. This thing actually, through this app, I can stream this to different locations if I want. I don't know if it goes into Blackboard, but I can still use this camera and remote without connecting the camera to the robot and just use it. I can put it on Collaborate and use the camera and Collaborate on there, and it'll still follow me around because the remote's still connected to the robot. It's just the audio would have to be different audio.
Okay, I'm curious about one thing. And so you said it records in 1080p, right? Okay, but the 1080p is also limited based off of the amount of megapixels that your camera can put out and record at the same time, right? So let's take, for example, I have a standard Samsung Galaxy, okay? I have a 16 megapixel camera in the front, and I believe it's a 13, in the back and a 13 in the front. I could be wrong.
It's probably 8 in the front.
Probably, yeah. So sometimes take for example, the 8 megapixel camera would definitely limit the ability to achieve 1080p. So you'd probably
No,
Or
five.
720
I think 5 megapixels is the lowest for 1080p.
for 1080p?
I think so. 8 megapixel definitely. This camera, this is the iPhone 10X Max or whatever. This one, iPhone X Max, so iPhone 10 Max. This one has a 1080p on the front and a 4K on the back, so.
Okay, and if I also remember correctly, so pixels are also limited based off the amount of lighting, so certain shades may not show up, which can also prohibit certain uses of specific recorded pixels.
Correct.
And you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the best way to get the best quality out of something like that when you're limited on the
If I was
hardware
using this
versus
remote,
software?
if I was using this iRobot, the swivel robot,
Yeah,
then I would set up some video lights or some, I could turn these stage lights on and have plenty of light, more than enough light
right,
to cover that.
right. But it's kind of dim in here, so are you actually achieving 1080p on that right now?
Yeah, it may look a little grainy, but for what we're doing, it's mostly about the audio today.
Okay,
If I wanted this to be more about what I'm demonstrating, then one, I would move the camera closer. And two, I would add lighting, because you'll see this on Wednesday, because I'm gonna bring in the video lights.
okay.
They're LED panel lights that are on stands that we can create lighting effects.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it, that's all.
Yeah, but that's something that, yes, in reality, that's what if you were doing something like this was a demonstration, then I would want this, again, to be closer and be able to do whatever.
Gotcha.
But if I was doing a true demonstration, I probably wouldn't even use that. I would record it at multiple camera angles and then post it online afterwards, an edited video. Because then I can actually control what angle the camera's at any given moment.
Right.
Or I have software that will allow me to connect up to 20 cameras and switch between the cameras live and do it that way.
Okay.
So then I could put a camera at different angles. Again, it's the setup that takes forever. And I can still put extra lighting and do all that good stuff and have whatever sound I want through it and all that. So yeah, there's all kinds of things we could do. It just depends on what I want to set up and how much time I have to set things up. Like before this class, I'm here usually around 8 o'clock. I don't have anything really before this class, just in the office. So I could come over and set up things before class sometimes, if I'm not in a meeting or something like that. So we're pretty good there. Now, sound system. I was going to tell you something about the sound. What was it? For our sound system, last spring, before the COVID happened, I asked the college what we used to have. You'll see in there, if you ever go in there, there's a rack, which is typical in sound systems. They have a rack that controls that handles all the things. So it's a cabinet that has like your equalizer and your whatever, just all your different things that are connected to the sound system. Your amp controller for your amps are there and all that stuff, right? So in here, they had that. Well, we used to have, and it may still be there, I have to look, there was a CD burner in there, and it was connected to the sound system. So you could plug in a couple of microphones on stage, do something, and burn it to a CD, which was great at the time 20 years ago. Actually, that board wasn't there that long ago. It was actually past due when they put it in, but that's okay. It was still something. So you could actually record a CD straight onto a CD, which was great. The only problem with that is, how many minutes can you record audio on CD?
About 90.
Try like 54, I think it is.
Probably thinking of
I think it's 50. If it's a standard CD, I think it's like 54 minutes. Well, if we were going to record the audio for a play, you can't do that because you're talking an hour and a half. And if it's a musical, you're sometimes talking 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
There's no way. You have to be able to start and stop and switch out and have time to switch out the CD. And maybe you can do that in some plays easier than others, but So you couldn't really get a good audio recording on CD. You'd have to use extra CDs and then still take it into a computer and put it together because you'd have to, if the scenes took place that took an hour before you had a good time to stop and flip it, change out the CD and put a new one in, because that takes at least 2 or 3 minutes to stop. It has to finalize the CD and then you take it out and then you put a new one in. That takes at least a couple of minutes to do that. And most of the time between scenes, you don't have but 30 seconds to a minute max. So it's not a good time to do it. So if we were going to record a whole play that's an hour and a half long, we may have to stop the CD in the middle of a scene, put a new one in, start it up, and then the next night do the same thing but stop it in a different scene so that we can have the full scene done, right? And we'd still have to take it to a computer, put all that audio onto the computer and still edit it and put it back out somewhere. See what I'm saying? So it's not exactly ideal. I mean, it was okay for certain things. If you're just doing a discussion that's no more than an hour long, probably okay. So finally, before the COVID happened, I gave them the specs for it, and they went and did it, and they purchased us it's basically what they use in video recording for audio, and it's a Tascam, I can't remember which model, but it's basically for a rack mount thing in here, but it works on SD cards. So you can put an SD card in there, little micro or whatever SD card, and record audio from the sound system onto the SD card. And you're limited based on what size SD card you have. So a CD is like that's a DVD is 4.7 gig. CD is like 80 megabytes. It's not even a gigabyte for a CD. But SD cards all are, 8, 12, or 8, 16, 32 gigabytes on up. And I think this thing will hold up to at least a 64 gigabyte SD card, if not 128, which is a ton of audio. You would never need that much audio in there. So that's kind of cool that we can do that now. Pull that SD card out, put it in a computer, your audio's there. We did this last spring when the whole COVID thing happened. Everybody was online, everybody was gone. I got some people together, a couple of students and a couple of people in the community and other faculty members somewhere else, and we did a audio version of The Importance of Being Earnest. And we rehearsed it through Blackboard Collaborate and Zoom and all that stuff over the time because we couldn't all be together or whatever. So we rehearsed it. The problem was, because our idea was we were going to perform this live, at least as an audio thing, over the internet. The problem is the internet. So it doesn't matter how good your computer is and how good your sound system is. If the internet's slow, it's going to buffer and do things like that. So what we're finding is my internet may have been fine. Somebody else's in the cast was having bad internet connection. And so I'd say my cue, and they'd miss it because they couldn't either hear it or there was a delay before they got it, which causes a delay in the delivery of the next line. So there's all this going on. So ideally, the idea would be to record it. And finally, when things started relaxing a little bit towards the summer, we were able to come in here, and I set up microphones, kept us distant from each other on stands, and we read it and recorded it on that system. So I have the audio files, I've just not had time to sit there and edit it and make it sound good. But, I mean, the audio sounded good. It's just cutting out where somebody screwed up and had to say the line again and those kind of things. So what you're going to find on things like that, those of you who want to do audio is great if the performer is good. If the performer has to say their lines 2 or 3 times each line and they're doing lots of lines, then you're gonna find that you have a lot of job to do after the fact, because you have to cut out all those parts where they screwed up and make it sound like one cohesive thing that was nonstop, when it was actually start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. It's great, you're gonna love it. Same thing for video. If you're doing video, you have to, that's why they do so many different takes from different angles, and again, you'll find this out in class if you haven't already heard it. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about safety. Again, some of these files are on Blackboard for you. I put a bunch of different files that I found from other theater companies, what their safety, scene shop safety and things like that are, because it's interesting to see what others require for theirs and how varied and different they may be. Even though you would think it'd be one thing should fit everybody, it doesn't. So you'll see those on Blackboard, and you can look through those. But basically, shop safety for us, meaning in here for us, is very simple in a way. Here's the main thing you got to remember. One, pay attention to what's going on. Don't get distracted by other people. Don't get distracted by other things. If we're doing something, like if I'm showing you how to use tools and you use the tools, you can't be on headphones doing something else, listening to something else. You got to be paying attention to what's going on. Does that make sense? That's the number one rule. Pay attention to what's going on. Stay focused on what we're doing. Two, there's no running around. I mean, literally running back and forth. If there was an accident and somebody's running to help somebody, that's a different situation. But technically speaking, don't run. Okay? Not that you guys are likely to do a lot of that anyway. We just don't do it. Three, be supportive of the other people. So if I'm doing something, be supportive and aware of what I'm doing. Does that make sense? For instance, if I get the ladder out and I go up on the ladder, somebody should come running over there slowly, not running, but come over there and grab a hold of the ladder to basically help. Not that you're doing anything, you're just making sure the ladder can't fall one way or the other on me. The spotter, basically, yes. Does that make sense? And that's what I mean by being aware, so that if you're not sure, like if I start before you guys, as you guys are coming in, and you see me go up on the ladder, I should have at least 2 people over there by the time I'm halfway up the ladder, already holding on to it. Does that make sense? Same thing like if I asked you to get the ladder out and they're still coming in, you would go help him out. Okay? That's just common decency. And make sure your mask is on while you're doing it. The other thing you need to do, don't wear loose clothing. When we're doing something with power tools, definitely don't wear loose clothing. Don't wear a lot of dangly jewelry. So if you have necklaces, like I couldn't wear this while we're doing that. I would have to, it's okay though, because I've got one of these I can put on the wrist instead, so that it'd be nice if I could just control it through my phone, my watch. That would be cool. But anyway, don't wear a lot of danglery, like your lanyard you got on your, is that your ID card or whatever? You would have to tuck that in or not wear it at all during that time. Does that make sense? Couldn't have your sunglasses down like that. The problem with that is if you're leaning over a power tool and something gets there and it gets caught in there, that could cause a lot of problems. You don't wear a necktie while you're cutting things, because if the tie gets caught in there, then it pulls and tightens on you. And again, it's a major problem. Or worse yet, if you're really not balanced when you're doing this, it gets caught in there, it pulls you down to the blade, and you don't want that.
Back in the 90s, there used to be a video game called Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. It was for the 3DO Interactive.
And that's why.
Basically, if you ever played this game, it violated a lot of those safety regulations that you definitely need in the process of something.
Yeah. Definitely. wear solid shoes, don't wear open-toed shoes or sandals or whatever when we're working on power tools. Because if a tool falls on your foot and you're not got a shoe on top of it, it's not going to feel good. Does that make sense? It may not feel good anyway, but it's going to feel even worse if you don't have that leather or whatever to protect you. Don't wear high heels when we're working on stuff. Wear clothing that you can get dirty. So if you need to bring, on those days that we might actually do something like that, if you need to bring a pair of clothes to change into, that's okay. Wear something that you can possibly get paint on in case we ever get to a point where we can do some painting in there. Although again, that's one of those things, they won't let us paint in this room. We'd have to go outside to paint. So it just depends on where we're at and what's going on. I don't know how many other classes or how many people are out. Like right now, I bet you there's nobody out back behind us.
Actually, there's like 2 people doing some kind of like rehearsal of some sort.
So it's acting class probably.
I didn't really pay that much attention. I passed it while going to the restroom.
Yeah.
It could have just been musical, but they were looking at something.
They could have been music students because the music classes are right here. So I don't know. If there's not a lot of people there, we can set it up and do it. Otherwise, again, we'd have to make sure it's set up and people are aware that we're doing something. And maybe we'll get to that point where we can do some of that because that would be cool. But again, when we're painting, we have to be socially distant from each other as well. So. Just a general rule of thumb, when you are in the class, unless we're on a break, you're not to be on your phones. If you need to use your phone to make a call or you're receiving a call that's important, you can step out of the room to do that and then come back when you're done. Now there may be times when I ask you to look things up on your phones or whatever you got, and that'll happen quite often. Because I like to do that. I like to ask you, hey, check this out. Go see if you can find this. So, but those are the general safety things. It's just common sense stuff for the most part. I will talk to you about on Thursday when we go online. I will show you, like I said, the power tools and hand tools. Talk about proper safety use of those, how far to keep your hands away from the blade and those kind of things like that. So we'll go into all that later. Now, what I want you to do, not right now, but this is your assignment for probably, we'll talk about these on Tuesday next week, is I want you to think of a play, find a play. Who's never read a play? Good, that's good, that helps. Who's read several plays? That helps too. All right, find a play. It can be any play you want. It can be a musical, probably. You're going to find this play. You're going to find an unusual prop. Everybody know what a prop is? Who doesn't know what a prop is? I'll tell you anyway, just because, even if you think you know. A prop is something that an actor uses on stage. Does that make sense? Either an actor carries it onto the stage, picks it up on stage, and or takes it off stage. That makes it a prop. If it's picked up or touched by an actor, it's a prop. If it's not used by an actor but it's sitting on stage, it becomes set dressing. So you see the difference? So if I have this table here, what would that be on stage? What? It's a set piece, so there's that. So it technically could be 3 things. It's a set piece because it is our scenery, right? What did you say? Set dressing. I'm not touching it. I've not used it during class, correct? So that makes it set dressing because it's not being used. But if I go over there and put something down on it or pick it up, then it becomes a prop. Does that make sense? Do you have a question?
I do. So, okay, I understand like certain things fall into certain technicalities. Let's say, for example, 2017's Dear Evan Hansen, right? The entire time, his entire costume is usually the blue T-shirt and the jeans, and he's got the backpack. But the one thing that stands out more than anything is the cast. It's just like the very point
Right.
of the story. He fell, broke his arm, and later they reveal that it's part of kind of like a fantasy that he's got, something that he tried to do to himself. So what would that cast be? Would it just be part of the costume, or would that count as a prop?
It would be a costume piece or part of the costume.
Okay.
But it depends on what they do with the cast. It could be a prop.
Well, it never came on.
Did it ever get put on? Was it always on the entire
The
show?
Broadway version that I saw, no. But I'm pretty sure other versions have probably altered that. There's been a few reiterations of it since.
Right. If it's just there the entire time, it's never done, then it's a costume.
Okay.
Unless they're doing certain things with it, then it could be a prop,
Okay.
even if it's still attached to his
So
arm.
it basically has to have free movement throughout the majority or a portion of the play to constitute a prop.
No.
No?
A prop, if I go over here and I pick up this box, this is set dressing. Now it's a prop. Now it's set dressing. That's it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It changes properties based on what it's doing or what's being done with it. So it's not a clear cut, oh, this is always a prop. It's only a prop when it's being used as a prop.
So it's something like Moses' staff or something like that.
As long as he's holding it and using it, it's a prop.
Okay.
Once he sets it down, it becomes set dressing.
Okay.
When he picks it back up, it becomes a prop.
Got it.
Yeah, they change properties based on what's going on with it. And that's typical of all things. Now, you can also have a prop that is what we call a practical. So a practical is a prop that is used as is, what it's meant to be, and it does the actual usage of it. So for instance, this table would be a practical when I set things down on it, right? If I have let's say a table lamp sitting on stage, that's set dressing because it's designed to look like a lamp sitting on stage, right, or sitting in a room or whatever. So that's set dressing, that's what it is. If it turns on or turns off, then it becomes a practical. Because now not only is it what it looks like, it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. A telephone sitting on stage is a set dressing. If it rings, it becomes a practical. I pick it up and talk on it, it becomes a prop. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. So those are the different distinctions of those. So what you're going to do is you're going to find a play, and you're going to find an unusual prop, and then I want you to figure out what you can about how would this prop be created if I was going to build this prop. What would I make it out of? What sizes would I need? Any of that kind of stuff. What kind of materials would be? And as cheaply and efficiently as you can for what it needs to be done with it. Does that make sense? And we'll talk about these on Thursday.
But we don't actually have to make it, we said.
No, right now all you're doing is conceptually, what would I do? If you want to draw it out as best you can, anybody in here draw? Okay. If you want to try to find pictures of something that looks like, you think what it looks like, then that's fine. All those things help. So that's what we're looking for is I want to know what show this is, and I want to know what kind of prop, and then I want to know how you would go about creating this prop. And I don't care if you know anything about creating props or not, this is part of the process of learning how you would, because you may have an idea of this is the way I want to do it, and then I'm going to ask you questions that's probably going to make you second guess what you're doing, even though you may be right on what you're doing. That's where I play devil's advocate or whatever. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
So main thing, get your prop, figure out what you want to do, how you want to do it, and then we're going to talk about them on Tuesday. Sound good? we still have quite a bit of time, so. Let's talk a little bit about this space here. So this is the auditorium. This is where we do the plays, right? So this is the stage. Does everybody know the parts of the stage? Upstage, downstage, stage right, stage left?
No, yeah.
So downstage is what? Is this downstage or is this upstage? He says downstage. What do you guys say?
Upstage would be facing that way.
The definition of downstage is the closest part of the stage that's closest to the audience. Okay, so if this is the type of audience we have, this is the closest part to the audience, correct? So this is downstage. To be precise, this would be downstage center. Make sense?
Because you're in the center of the stage.
Because I'm in center stage. If I move over here, this would be
Downstage left.
downstage left or downstage right. He says left. Who agrees? Anybody disagree?
So it would technically be right, wouldn't it?
No. Downstage left. And here's why. If you're standing in center of the stage, everything to the actor's left is left, stage left. Everything to the actor's right is stage right.
Okay, so that's where it's reversed. So when you say exit stage.
When you're talking about the audience, then you're in the house. That's what the audience is called, the house. House left would be the audience's left as they're facing the stage. House right would be the audience's right as they're stationed to face.
So exit stage left is technically right for the audience.
Right.
Left for the audience, but right for you. That's
Correct.
where I got confused. Okay.
Yeah, because it's always about the actor when they're on stage. When it's the house, it's always about the audience facing the stage. Okay? So downstage, by definition, is always closest to the audience. Upstage is furthest from the audience, or the opposite direction of downstage. They're always opposite of each other. Okay? Downstage left, upstage left, just stage left. Downstage right, upstage right. Okay? Center stage is the exact center. Does that make sense? Those are the 9 positions of the stage. That's important to know because if I say, hey, focus this light downstage left, you need to know that's over here. Does that make sense? Because you're going to be out there in the house, which to you would be the right. Got it? So it's always good to know, and believe me, theater people that are new to theater, and sometimes even the ones that have been around for a while, sometimes get confused. You'll have actors, especially new actors, you expect it. But you have actors who've been on stage forever. It's like, where's stage left again? And then they finally figure it out. It happens. It's just because for some reason, it's one of those things that confuses people. But eventually you get it. Okay, so that's the 9 areas of stage. So this is our stage. And again, this stage is not gigantic. It's about 16 feet deep. And I think it's around 32 feet wide, which is not a bad sized stage. It's just not gigantic. It's not like a real big proscenium stage. This is what we call a proscenium stage. Everybody know what that means? Proscenium stage. Proscenium is an ancient Greek word they used back in the old days for a type of stage. Basically, it means that the audience sits on one side. So all the audience is over here facing this way. Okay? That's what it means. Now, as you can see, this section and this section are the worst seats in the house. Why? Because if you're sitting way over here, you're facing that wall. You're not facing here. When this building was built, it was not designed to be a theater. It was designed to be a lecture hall with 3 separate stages. This beam here and this beam here, there used to be panels that came down a track. So there was a track in the floor and a track on the ceiling, and those panels came down, and that section of wall there that's been walled, it's been drywalled in, used to be a closet to store those panels. So they'd slide down the track one at a time and create a separate barrier, a wall, between that section, this section, and that section. So that, in theory, you could have 3 different lectures going on at the same time.
And wouldn't that kind of interact with one another with the walls being?
Yes. It was not a great design. It was just the way it was done.
Undoubtedly terrible.
But that was done like in the 70s. Well, I mean, at the time they weren't using sound system. So I mean, if somebody's just talking, it would dampen the sound to some degree, but you're always going to hear what's in the next section, right? So it was mostly designed for breakout sessions. We'd have one big one, then we'd bring these walls down and break out into 3 groups or whatever. It was not ideal no matter what, and it was never used much. I guess early on they used it a little bit, supposedly. When I got here, it was used one time a year for some conference thing that some group rented the space to do it or something like that. And even then, it was barely. So when they renovated this space, we talked them into getting rid of those because they were useless. And they got rid of the track and they put cement, because this is cement floor, so they filled in the slot where the track was with cement too to make it a solid floor. But the reason why those seats face that way, because the way this floor was designed, and because it is concrete, there's not like any way to fix it, is this is on a slope, right, which is typical for stages. The problem is this slope is not the same all the way across. That is sloped a little bit different, and that is, and those seats had to be arranged, the mounts. In other words, if you took this row of seats out and tried to put it here, they wouldn't fit right, because the way the mounts are is designed to mount on a certain type of slope at a certain angle. So like this angle is like this, that one's like this. See, it's a little bit slightly different angle, but it's enough to cause a problem. So they couldn't turn those to face this way without it really being weird. Yeah. And walking and seating wise, it would have been extremely weird to do.
And tearing up all that concrete and repurposing it would be too much for the school to afford.
Oh, it would cost a ton of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still fine. And the only time you have that problem is during musicals and stuff. You can still see, you just have to turn more this way. It's just not as good as, these are the best seats. But yeah, there used to be, instead of the aisle being where it is, the aisle was directly underneath this beam and this beam. And there was still one in the middle, I think. Yeah. It was okay. So then there's the control booth. The control booth used to have just a window. It did not have a door in the window. It was just a window that was solid. So you couldn't do anything, because you go back in there. We originally were going to put the soundboard, and in fact the soundboard was back there originally, and we were going to put this lighting board back there. You can't see much. I mean, you can see some, but you couldn't hear anything that was going on out here, because there was no monitors in there. But with that window being solid, you couldn't hear. So if somebody was here talking on stage, you couldn't hear what they were saying. So during shows, there was no way to hear the cues to go to the next cue. So originally we put a box around out front and set up the sound and lights out front. Didn't look as good. And that was one reason when they renovated, they put the window in so that we could actually use that space now. And then I've got it set up where there's a monitor. So we've got these 3 mics here that are only used, they're not used to amplify sound to the audience. They're only used to put sound in the booth so that we can hear what's going on. And it works good. So you can be on here, you don't have to be mic'd, and I can hear everything in the booth that I need to hear when I need to hear it. So that works out pretty good. So in this room, you got the stage, you got the house, right? The booth is where all that stuff is. If you go out either one of these 2 doors, it gets confusing back there. So if you go out either one of those doors, you're going to see 4 doors. So it's basically like a little hallway with some steps down. So if you go out, let's start with this one. If you go out this door here, you open that door, the door to the booth will be behind this door when it's open. So you have to walk out, shut that door to get into the booth. Okay? But when you walk out that door, there will be a door to your left, down a couple of steps. That's to that closet where those panels used to be. That's where we store props and lights and stuff. There'll be a door that goes out to this side over here into the house. So if you go up that aisle, there's a door out to go down. And then there's a door that'll be facing you down on the bottom steps that takes you out to the parking lot. Same thing on this side, just opposite. Does that make sense? So when you go out there, you could leave through this door to go out to the parking lot if you wanted to. You're not supposed to during the COVID thing. You're supposed to use the appropriate exits, whatever those are. Which I think in this one, they don't even have it set up necessarily that way.
Yeah, I still don't follow the lines in Walmart.
I don't know where the lines are in some buildings, so. But anyway, that's how that is. So we have prop storage back there, prop storage over here in those. We also have that cabinet back there that has props in it. And again, there's that. Then back here, you see the curtain. There's a door here. There's a door there. Same thing over there. There's a door to the side, and then there's a door in the back. This door here, if you go out this door, walk along behind here, you come up into this door. This is basically a closet. Okay? In that closet, there's another. So if I open this door here, you should see another door. See that door? It's back behind. It's dark. That door is the elevator control system. It's always locked. So when they come and do maintenance on the elevator, that's where they go. Okay? So this is a long closet, goes this way, and then goes back that way, a little bit around that inner closet where the elevator stuff is. So we can put some props and stuff there during the show, and our actors, that's the backstage for the actors. There are yellow lines on the floor painted on there. You cannot keep anything in the yellow lines. So if there's any props or something sitting there, they have to be moved out of the yellow lines. Then if you open this door, prop storage back here, cabinets and stuff, and then that glass door goes to the outside where you guys were all sitting before class. A lot of you. Okay? This door here, if you go out that door there, takes you out to where the elevator is. So you're still inside the building, you're just right there by the elevator. Make sense? Nice, quick, simple thing. So it's quite interesting because during a play, if we're doing an actual play in here and we got scenery and we have actors, then we typically have to prop those doors open so that they're open and then we put, either we have scenery blocking this so the audience can't see that there's a doorway here or here, or we have a curtain pulled here so that it can't be seen. So that we can have the actors will have a way to go from out here where the bathrooms are to back here where the backstage waiting area is. Or they might need to go over here because maybe this is set up as a dressing room and a dressing room back there or whatever. So it gets interesting because there's very little space. And again, Fiddler on the Roof, over 50 actors in the cast. They had to stay back here as much as possible during the show, behind the set.
Did they at least get food?
What's that?
Did you guys at least like have refreshments for them back there? Because that's a pretty long play.
Well, they were allowed to bring their own, not necessarily back here. We had, in that situation, we had 2 classes along the front hallway during the performance that we used as dressing rooms. One for the men, one for the women. and they'd always have snacks and stuff out there for that. And if we had kids in the show, their parents were in the play, they would stay over there as much as possible, and somebody'd come and get them before it was time for their scenes. But even then, we had a lot of people up here on stage. We had, I want to say, like 10 tables. We built tables, wooden tables for this, and chairs. We built, meaning me, I built all these tables and chairs for this because we wanted authentic looking chair. I mean, this set over 100 years ago. So this kind of chair would not have existed like that. And even if they had metal chairs, which they did, they didn't look like this, right? So we built tables and chairs. And it was actually me and the guy that was the department chair at the time. We were the ones that did it all. But we had, I think it was 10 tables with at least 2 or 3 chairs around each table. Because there's the wedding scene where they're in the bar. It's not the wedding scene, it's the scene where the butcher is asking for the Tevye for his daughter's hand, and he agrees upon it and all this stuff. So they're getting drunk and having a good old time. And they sing L'Chaim to life. And then they have the Russian dancers come in and do their dance. So we got the Russian tap dance thing going on. So we have all the Russians in there. We have all the Jewish guys in there. So there's a bunch of people on stage with all these tables and chairs up here too. So it was great. But again, 50-something people in the cast, and we did it all in this little space and with this little space back here. Now, typically what I do is, if you look out here, if you go out there, the elevator's roughly towards the end of the building here. We usually put a curtain up on this side of the elevator so we can block off that section right there for actors to be sitting there, so not have to be, so that when an audience member goes out to go to the bathroom, they don't see the actors standing around. That's typically what we do, because we like it so much.
This class ends at
11:45.